All right, welcome back. It is Q1, week 7, day 3. It's good to have you back. Today we're going to do some pelt mapping. So what I want to do today is I want to take this vase here that's kind of cool because it's glass. But what I want to do is I want to make it, I want to UV it. Mostly because it's kind of a pain to UV, and that's a lot of what you're going to be doing from now on. Most of our UVs won't be easy like the stuff we've done so far. They're going to be much harder. So because of that, we need to learn how to do it. So you should have your vase from last time. I'm going to highlight it here. And so I've got this vase. What I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this. So I'll right click, isolate selection. Cool. So here's my vase all by itself. Now what I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about pelt mapping. Pelt mapping is an easier way to lay out stuff than what we did before with our standard UV mapping tools. A lot of the pelt mapping tools that we're using now weren't available in 2014, or they weren't as efficient in 2014. But now it's the future and things are better. So now we're going to do some cool stuff, and you're going to be a little bit angry with me because this is way easier than what we were doing before. But you know, it's kind of like doing math, doing multiplication by adding a bunch of numbers together. So you kind of need to understand the concept first before you get into it, right? So that's why we did the other videos. But now we're going to do a little bit faster. It's kind of like using a calculator. So first things first, hit M. And we're going to throw a different material on this so we can see it. I'm going to add a scan line, standard material, and gray is fine. I don't really care. We're going to make sure that's visible, and we're going to apply it. So that way, I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. Actually, I'm going to close it. That's better. All right, so now we've got our vase. Now, your vase probably doesn't look like mine, and that's kind of the point. We want it to be efficient, and we want it to be unique so that you're dealing with a different problem than I am. Okay, if you haven't made your vase already, go ahead and check out our earlier video. I think number 30 is where we created this. Maybe 30, maybe 32. Anyway, the spline and lathing and lofting is how we created all this, and that starts around 30. So first things first, we can't UV it like this. It'll come out weird. So what we need to do is convert it to an editable poly. So go ahead and right click, go down convert to editable poly. Now once again, I isolated this so it's by itself. All the other stuff is still in the scene. If you hit H, you can see all the stuff that's still in the scene, but it's hidden. Display hidden. There, so that's all the different stuff that's in the scene. But we don't care about that. We're just working on this. So first things first, I would take something like this vase if I was working on it for an interactive application, and I would look and see what I really need. So let's optimize this a little bit. I'm going to take some edges out because I don't think we really need them. So I'm going to double click here and maybe there and probably here and maybe there. And then I'm pretty sure I don't need this many loops, so I'm going to get rid of that one and that one. I'm basically just picking loops that I feel like I can get rid of without a whole lot of real change in the shape of the object, without taking away too much of the curve factor. Definitely can't take this one away because it'll make a big difference. You want to keep the same shape, but maybe eliminate some of these loops. So what I've done is I've grabbed a whole bunch of loops. I'm going to back up a little bit, hit G to turn my grid off, and now I'm going to remove those loops. So loops, remove loops. I believe, in my opinion, you can't really tell that I did that. There's not a whole lot of change to the actual shape. So I'm going to remove a few more. Maybe this one too. Loops, remove loop. From a distance, I don't think you can actually see a change in a lot of what I'm doing, which is good. That's the point. We're getting rid of our try count while still keeping the same shape, right? And that's kind of the point, okay? I don't want to change the shape of the object. I don't want it to look less cool. I just want it to use less verts or less resources in general. So I'm going to keep cleaning this up. And as you could probably, hopefully, you can rewind and see how many vertices I'm actually removing. Not just verts, but edges. How many edges I'm removing versus how many. I'm going to take a ton out of the center here. And a whole lot out of the bottom. I'm not going to take many out of this edge here because we need those, but not these. So I'm going to take a lot of these out because usually no one's going to look on the inside of this vase. I'm literally going to take away almost all of them, all the way down to the end. Cool. Now, once again, I am at 40,000 tries right now, but that is the whole scene. Currently I'm at, well, I'm selecting edges, but let me remove this, remove loop. Once again, I believe that this is much more efficient and it's not actually changing the shape much. So that's where we're at. So I've made this more efficient, okay? And once I make this more efficient and I've gotten rid of the loops, I look around and make sure there's not more that I could probably get rid of. Left Z. If I get rid of any of these, it starts changing the shape of the bottom. If I get rid of this one, it'll make this a lot harder, sharper of an edge. I could definitely get rid of this one. Loop. Remove loop. All right, cool. So now, I don't know what I started with, but now I'm down to 832 tries, which is pretty, much more efficient. So there's that. Okay, cool. So I've still got the same basic shape. I'm just way more efficient at what I'm doing, which is good. So let's go ahead and get into the UV process. So make sure you don't have anything selected here. So currently I have polygon selected. Deselect that, and then go into the modifier list and type in UN for unwrap UVW. Hit enter. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to make sure I label this as M for mesh underscore vase. Actually, fancy vase. Cool. Perfect. All right, great. So I made it efficient, and now I'm getting ready to UV it. I added this UV unwrap modifier. I'm going to open the UV editor. Now currently the UV looks like this. So in order to determine how good of a UV we have, we should add a checker map. So hit M, bring up your material, and I'm going to right click over here, go to Maps, General, Checker. I can take this, drag it into diffuse, double click on the checker part. For tiling, I'm going to put 10 by 10. 10 by 10. And then see where we're looking. Okay, cool. So remember, we want squares because we've added a perfectly square material to this, but we don't have perfect squares. We have weird stretching here. We've got lines on the bottom. It is a mess. Can't have that. So the way we're going to fix this is by laying it out. And the way we're going to lay it out, instead of doing what we did before, which would include basically grabbing a bunch of faces and then cylindrical mapping and stuff like that, which works, but we have a better or different system now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use pelt mapping. Pelt mapping is really a great way to create seams before for things that are round and smooth and organic. Okay, this isn't exactly organic, but it's still got a weird bunch of edges. It's got this crease in the middle, and if we just lay it out with the standard tools, we can still get it done, but this way it's going to be faster. So pelt mapping and peel mapping uses this section over here. Generally what we do is we set peel mode to turn on, and what it does is it turns our object pink and it lays it out in the UV. Then what we do is we go down here to point seams, and we start thinking about where our seams are going to be. Now we talked about seams before and laying out seams. What this does is it automatically lays them out for us by basically saying where we want to slice it. So I'm going to click point seams, and first things first, I'm going to click on this top edge on the inside. You'll notice it turns blue. You don't have to hold anything, but go ahead and grab 2 lines over and you'll see a little orange section. It highlights orange what you've got. All right, as you do this, that line becomes green, and we're going to keep clicking all the way around the lip of this. And if you notice in the UV window, it's actually cutting it out and laying it out for you. So what I've got now is I've got the entire top, which is still a mess, and the inside, which is still a mess. But you can see that it's starting to lay out. I've got two different sections. Now when I'm done cutting this top lip, I'm going to right click and end it. Now I'm going to start again at the bottom. At the bottom, I'm going to start at the bottom and go around this bottom section, because what I want to do is I want to planar map this bottom section. And luckily, this peel system will automatically planar map something once we get it cut off. Okay? And it planar maps it, so this whole bottom section now has a square. Now the square is really big, and I believe it's down there, but that's okay. We'll deal with that in a second. All right, the next thing. From the front view, hit F, zoom in. We are going to actually slice the inside of this object on this edge right here. So I'm going to click right here and click that edge. When I do so, it creates an edge on the inside. I'm going to right click, and it's made it so that this lays out relatively flat, and we've got basically decent size legitimate squares on the inside. They're diagonal, and that's because this is diagonal, but we'll fix that in a second too. But squares, hey, hallelujah, squares, yes. All right, cool. Now that's the front side. We put it on the back of the front side because let's pretend that, you know, people are going to look at this from the front, which means they'll look at it here. If they're going to look at it there, that means the front side is right there, and that's kind of easy to hide. Okay, now let's do the same thing on the back here. So I'm going to do the same thing on the back side, starting here. And now the cool part about this is it'll automatically connect the dots as long as it's in the same direction. So if it doesn't get confused, you should be able to take it all the way down the back seam to here. Boom. Once again, we've got rough, really rough, but still visible squares. I want to hit F3 so I can see a little better. Make sure I'm getting all the way. All right, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the inside loop of the bottom, where the bottom touches the ring, like the base of the thing. Now you'll notice I'm only going like, I don't know, a quarter of the way around. If I go too far, sometimes it goes the wrong direction. We don't want that. But you can see it. But you can see it. Okay, so as you can see, I have looped around this center section. Okay, so now once again we're going to continue this edge down the bottom. Right. Make sure I get the right one here, and there, all the way down to here. Once again, the orange line lets you know where you're going. Now I'm going to loop this bottom section, F3, so I can see. We'll see how far I can actually do it. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to see how far I can get. See, the orange works, it works. Up. I can get about a third of the way before it cuts across the middle. There. And then right there. And then there. Cool. All right. So we have actual squares. And if you look at this, everything's sort of laid out. I mean, it needs work. But hey, it's way easier than grabbing a bunch of faces and then trying to cylindrical map and all this other stuff. So I'm going to I was going to maximize it, but I think I'll just expand it out so we can see. All right. So cool. So let's look at this. So hit 3. Now you'll notice all these little points here have been pinned. Any edges that we adjusted are pinned. So I'm going to go ahead and hit number 1, grab all these, and then deselect those pins so that they're all set. And now I'm going to use this button, select all of them with this, like that. Make sure none, and then I'm going to use this button here, Pack Normalize. What this does is it sort of normalizes the shape and the size of all of the cube, or of all the squares. So now all of the squares should be roughly the same size. Now once again, they are squares, and that's the important part. However, they are like kind of all over the place, and this is where the art comes in. Like, this is where you get to decide what's important, what's not important, and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these shapes and say, all right, for instance, I'm getting a lot of not weird, but the distortion that I'm getting is now down around this bottom section, right? It's small here, and there's waves in it, and stuff like that. I can actually eliminate some of these problems by using this peel mode, clicking on this, and then actually going in, instead of before I was actually taking edges and breaking them. Now I don't have to do that. I can just select them. As long as I'm in peel mode already, it automatically breaks them for me. And I can grab whole sections at the same time and then split them out. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of breaking these edges so that they come apart and they flatten out a little better. And you can see as I do this, what's happening. It's breaking the edge and then laying it out a little more, a little flatter. Now, this is a catch-22 because as I do this, I'm also creating seams, more seams, right? So see all these seams at the bottom? I'm actually making more of them, which means if there is a little bump in the image or something, you'll be able to tell. It'll take a little more work for your 2D artist, but it will help eliminate some of the distortion we're getting throughout the rest of it. So now if you look at this, the rest of it is less distorted, but we've got seams along the bottom. Now, you're always trying to hide seams. So the seams that are here at the bottom that sort of pinch in to where it meets, they're not really going to be seen most of the time anyway, because you're going to be looking at this thing like this. The fewer seams you can see, the better. So we always put seams where we can hide them, and that's one of the good places on this to hide it. If we really wanted to, we could probably put a seam under here, since 90% of the time you'll be looking down at this object like that. So if we wanted to put a seam, we could put one here. I'm not going to bother with that for now, and I am going to turn peel off, select all of this, and then pack normalize again. Once again, our checkers are better. They're not quite straight, but that's okay. We can try and lay things out a little straighter by using some other tools. We can do this tool here, and that lays out our object straight. However, sometimes this doesn't actually work well. Like we get odd sections that are larger than, some sections are larger than the other, and then you've got to like go through and adjust them, which we could. We could grab these, move them in so it's a little more consistent. Then grab this one and move it in. Oop, I have it. Why can't I move it? There we go. A little more consistent, and just basically try and get them all to where they're about the same size. Now if you look down on the inside, it's pretty good. I mean, the seam will give you a weird sort of swap, but generally much better. And if they're a little rectangular, which maybe they are, you can actually shrink them a little bit to make them more square. There. See, same thing for the outside. Grab this whole object, and this button down here, select by elements, really important. We can take this and see if we can lay that out. Tools, we can relax polygon angles and see if that helps. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You can try and relax it like this, but usually that's a mess. So eventually you just kind of find a happy medium. Now, because of the nature of using peel and when we use peel, most of the time we're going to be dealing with stuff that we can sort of fudge a little bit with. We can also look at things like this. So this is the bottom of the vase, which is the least important part because hopefully no one's going to really look at it. So we can shrink that up. The most important parts are probably this part here, and then maybe this part, that part there. So I would say these two are the most important sections. And I think we take this and get it out of the way. Grab this, which we said was the most important. These two, we can pack these in like this. Where was it? Oh yeah, rescale and rotate. Rescale and rotate allows this to rescale and rotate the parts that it needs to, so that it will automatically rotate things to fit it in more efficiently. So we can press this button and it sort of repacks it in. Now it's not 100% efficient, and you'll want to probably adjust it. I always make sure the most important thing is bigger, so it's getting plenty of texture resolution, and then everything else sort of fits in as it can, right? So there's that, And it, once again, it all comes down to an art. Okay, it's art. It's not like always going to be the same thing. You're going to have to sort of pick and choose. You don't want to overlap anything, and you also need to realize what parts are more or less important. Okay, you want all of your cubes to be roughly the same size, except for parts that you really know need to be specifically sized. Okay, but I think that's it. We've sort of laid this out. We've laid it out. There's mostly squares. We've got our seam here, but everybody's going to have a seam. When we create the 2D texture on this, we'll have to make sure that the 2D artist knows that they need to blend this edge with this edge. And they'll be able to do that in Photoshop because that's kind of their job. Same thing for this edge here, and you can actually see which edges connect by selecting one. So if I select this edge, you'll notice it's red, and this one is blue, which means this edge connects to this edge. Okay, if I select this ring, then these edges are blue because that ring is right in there and it attaches to there. Okay, if we wanted to, we could actually stitch these together. So if I wanted to stitch, make sure you don't select by element. If you want to stitch this one, you can stitch it like we did before. Stitch to source, and it automatically stitches this edge to that one. We could do it the other way, which goes from here to there. But we're not doing either of those right now because that's not our job at the moment. So you should have this completed. Now, as a final sort of step, let's go ahead and bring in our material editors. So hit M again. I'm going to go ahead and let's do another material. Let's do a general material. Let's do a physical material because it's cool. And let's choose a preset. I don't know. Let's see. How about we've got concrete in here. Let's do matte aluminum. That sounds fun. Let's do that and drag it into our object, our material. Oh wait, whoops, just kidding. Double click it. Mr. Don is so dumb. All right, view and viewport, and then apply. All right, cool. So now we've got our matte aluminum. We hit F9, and we render it out. It looks like polished, or I guess not polished, but matte aluminum. So I was looking for a concrete, something with a little bit of a bump to it. But we will adjust that. We'll probably go ahead and create a Photoshop file and do that next time. So for now, understand that that is how we are going to lay out the UV so it's nice and flat. All of our pieces are basically aligned and make sense. Our checker map look good. And then next time we'll go ahead and talk about how you can take these edges like this one. Yeah, let me double click. And then make it line up with that one in Photoshop so that you don't have any weird issues. All right? I will see you next time.